My daughter-in-law barred me from my own house and declared this home is ours now. I called one person. 20 minutes later the police and a moving truck arrived. I still remember the exact sound the deadbolt made when it clicked shut behind me. It was a heavy, final sound, the kind that settles in your chest and stays there. I was standing on the front porch of the two-story colonial I had lived in for 31 years, holding a grocery bag with milk and bread, and my daughter-in-law Vanessa was on the other side of the door telling me I no longer belonged inside. It was a Tuesday afternoon in late October. The maple trees along Maplewood Lane were already half bare, and the air had that sharp Midwestern edge that makes you pull your sweater tighter. I had only gone out for 20 minutes. Caleb, my son, was at work at the distribution center. The twins, Ethan and Lily, were still at school. Vanessa had been home alone with the baby when I left. When I came back, the screen door was locked and the main door would not open. I knocked. I called her name through the glass. She appeared in the front window holding little Noah on her hip, her face set in that cold way I had started noticing more and more over the past year. She did not open the door. She just spoke loud enough for me to hear through the glass. "This home is ours now, Margaret. You need to leave." I stood there with the plastic bag cutting into my fingers and tried to make sense of the words. Ours. The house my husband Ray and I bought in 1995 with every dollar we had saved from his overtime at the plant and my shifts at the elementary school cafeteria. The house where Caleb took his first steps in the living room and where Ray took his last breath in the downstairs bedroom 6 years ago. The house that still had Ray's workbench in the garage and the garden beds I had tended every spring since the kids were little. I told her to open the door. She shook her head. I told her this was still my name on the deed. She answered that things had changed. Then she turned away from the window and disappeared into the house, leaving me on the porch with the groceries and the wind starting to pick up. I set the bag down and tried my key again. The lock had been changed. The spare key I kept under the flower pot was gone. I walked around to the side gate and found that padlock too. The backyard where the twins' swing set still stood was closed off to me. For a long minute I just stood there on the sidewalk looking up at the house. The neighbor's curtains twitched. Mrs. Delgado across the street was watering her mums and pretending not to watch. I felt the heat rise in my face, the same heat I used to feel when the HOA sent those polite little notes about the height of the grass or the color of the shutters. Only this time the judgment was coming from inside my own walls. I sat down on the front steps because my knees had gone soft. The concrete was cold through my jeans. I thought about the last year, the slow way the house had started to feel less like mine. After Ray died, Caleb and Vanessa had moved in just until they got on their feet. That was 3 years ago. Vanessa had been between jobs. Caleb's hours at the warehouse kept getting cut. I had the extra bedrooms and I was lonely in the quiet, so I said yes. I cooked. I watched the kids. I paid the property taxes and the insurance out of Ray's pension and my Social Security. I told myself it was temporary, that families help each other. Then the comments started. Small ones at first. Vanessa saying the furniture looked dated. Caleb asking if I had thought about downsizing. Vanessa rearranging the kitchen cabinets without asking. The twins calling me Grandma Margaret in that careful tone children use when they have been coached. Little Noah learning to say Mama's house when he pointed at the front door. Last month Vanessa had asked to see the paperwork on the house. She said she wanted to understand the mortgage, even though there was no mortgage left. Ray and I had burned that note the year before he got sick. I showed her the deed. My name and Ray's, joint tenants with right of survivorship. After he passed, it became mine alone. She had studied it for a long time and then smiled in a way that did not reach her eyes. I should have seen it coming. I did not. Sitting on those steps I took out my phone. My hands were shaking so hard I nearly dropped it. I had one person I trusted with this kind of trouble. Not Caleb. Not any of the church ladies who would have brought casseroles and pity. One person. His name was Harlan Crow. He had been Ray's best friend since they were both 18 and working the line at the old auto plant. After Ray died, Harlan had helped me with the will and the accounts. He was retired now, lived 2 towns over, and still kept a small law office out of the front room of his house because he said sitting still made his back seize up. I had his number saved under Harlan, emergency. I called him. He answered on the second ring. I told him what had just happened, the locked door, the changed locks, the words Vanessa had spoken through the glass. There was a long silence on the other end. Then he said, very quietly, "Stay right where you are. Do not leave the property. Do not argue with her. I am on my way." I hung up and sat there with the phone in my lap. 20 minutes. That is what he said it would take him to drive from his place to Maplewood Lane if the lights were with him. Those 20 minutes stretched. I watched the school bus stop at the corner and the twins climb down with their backpacks. Ethan saw me first. He ran up the walk and asked why I was sitting outside. Lily followed, quieter, already looking toward the front window where Vanessa had reappeared. I told them Grandma was just waiting for a friend. Vanessa opened the door then, but only wide enough to let the children inside. She did not look at me. The door shut again. A few minutes later a dark blue sedan pulled up to the curb. Harlan got out wearing the same gray windbreaker he always wore, the one with the frayed cuff. Behind him came a second car, a marked police cruiser. 2 officers stepped out. Then, almost at the same moment, a white box truck from a local moving company turned the corner and parked across the street. Harlan walked up the steps and put a hand on my shoulder. He did not ask how I was. He just said, "I filed the emergency motion this morning after your text. The judge signed the order 20 minutes ago. We are enforcing it now." I had texted him the day before when Vanessa first floated the idea that the house should be put in Caleb's name for the children's future. I had not realized how seriously he had taken it. The officers approached the door. One of them knocked hard and announced themselves. Vanessa opened it this time, Noah still on her hip, her face pale. Harlan handed the lead officer a folded paper. I heard the words court order, lawful owner, immediate restoration of possession. Vanessa's voice rose. She said this was her family's home. The officer answered that the deed and the court order said otherwise. Caleb's truck pulled into the driveway while the officers were still talking. He got out looking confused and angry all at once. Harlan met him on the lawn and spoke in that low, steady voice Ray used to trust. I could not hear every word, but I saw Caleb's shoulders drop. He looked at me once, then at the moving truck, then back at the house. The movers opened the back of the truck and waited. Vanessa was given 30 minutes to gather personal belongings for herself, Caleb, and the children. The rest would be inventoried and stored at a facility until the court sorted the rest. She cried. The twins cried. Little Noah reached for me over her shoulder and I held him for a moment until she took him back. I did not go inside while they packed. I stayed on the porch with Harlan and the officers. Mrs. Delgado finally came across the street with a thermos of coffee and stood with me without saying much. The wind had picked up and the last of the maple leaves skittered across the lawn. When the truck was loaded and the family was in Caleb's truck, Vanessa rolled down the window. She looked at me one last time and said she hoped I was happy. I did not answer. There was nothing left to say that would not turn into something uglier than it already was. The police stayed until the truck pulled away and the locks were changed back to the original set Harlan had brought from the hardware store. He handed me the new keys. The officers wished me a quiet evening and left. Harlan sat with me on the steps for a while longer, the same way he and Ray used to sit after long shifts, not talking much, just listening to the neighborhood settle into evening. Inside, the house felt larger than it had in years. The twins' drawings were still on the refrigerator. Noah's high chair sat empty in the kitchen. Ray's old recliner still faced the television. I walked through every room once, turning on lights as I went, because the quiet felt heavier than the arguing ever had. I made a cup of tea and sat at the table where Ray and I used to pay the bills together. The grocery bag was still on the porch. I brought it in and put the milk away. Outside, the streetlights came on one by one along Maplewood Lane. Somewhere down the block a dog barked and a garage door rumbled shut. I did not call Caleb that night. I did not check my phone for messages from Vanessa. I just sat in the kitchen of a house that was once again only mine and listened to the ordinary sounds of a suburban evening, the kind of sounds I had almost forgotten were possible.